Hi there, my name is Reverend Vale Weller, and I'm the Congregational Giving Director at the Unitarian Universalist Association. And I'm here with you to talk about congregational giving and the fact that it requires courage. I invite you to take a deep breath and ground yourself. And I will share some words written by Reverend Wayne Arneson. Take courage, friends. The way is often hard, the path is never clear, and the stakes are very high. Take courage, for deep down there is another truth. You are not alone. I'd like to introduce some terms that are commonly used in this work, and the first is stewardship, which means the careful and responsible management of something entrusted to one's care. Fundraising is what allows stewardship to occur. We invite and ask for contributions, that resources of a variety of kinds, and then it is those resources that we steward, responsibly manage, that have been entrusted to our care. And a covenant is a formal agreement or promise. The word courage comes from the Old French and from the Latin cor, which means heart. And at the heart of the impulse to give is courage. Specifically, the courage of one's convictions, the confidence to act in accordance with one's beliefs. We should understand it as a privilege to be able to help people link their resources with their most dearly held values. Fundraising is at heart a spiritual issue because it's this linkage that we're allowing people to strengthen between their values and their resources. And to allow those to be in perfect alignment is a matter of spiritual health and is often understood to be, some people are greatly reluctant to work in stewardship, but this is something that, again, is a real privilege to be able to do with people. In a book that I recommend, which is called Making the Annual Pledge Drive Obsolete, the authors Timothy Dombeck and Michael Durall say that stewardship is about inviting people into commitment to a different and more fulfilling way of life. And this is really a sacred obligation. This is appropriate that this happens in religious community. And after all, aren't people looking for all of the ways they can to make meaning of life? That is the work of religion. And so we invite them to use all of the resources at their command to craft lives of meaning and purpose. I'm going to be sharing with you a number of questions that I'm going to ask you to reflect on, but I also want you to see this as a resource. And so I want you to imagine that these are questions that you could use in discussion groups within your congregation, at a board meeting or at a finance committee meeting, or working with your stewardship team or generosity team. And the first one comes out of a reaction to a question that people often ask me. Don't we as Unitarian Universalists give to lots of different causes? Isn't that one of the reasons why there isn't that much that we have to give to our congregations? So I started doing a lot of thinking about that, and I realized that for many of us, if not for all of us, it is our UU principles that influence the decisions that we make about the causes we're going to support. So the question is, in what ways do our Unitarian Universalist principles influence your own giving? And I want you to think about the causes that you give to outside of your support for your congregation, and think about why you care about those causes, and break that care down to its essential foundation, and think about the value that underlies your support for that cause. And then think about part 3 is, how does this value relate to your Unitarian Universalist beliefs? So I invite you to pause the presentation here, and if you're with a group, to have that conversation in dyads. You each get 5 minutes to think about and reflect on the ways in which your UU principles influence your giving. See you back here in 5. So we're back from that reflection, and the takeaway here for me is that we want to honor all of the giving that people do and celebrate that generosity impulse. But it's time that we begin to encourage people to fund their spiritual community first and allow this to serve as their foundation for the other giving that they're moved to do. Because all of the causes that we support are important, but they likely flow from our UU principles. Our principles are primary, and certainly Unitarian Universalist values are worth sacrificing for. So who is it that's doing the giving? Unitarian Universalists, statistically, are the second highest earning income group of any religious group. That's statistically speaking now. So in terms of that comparison to other religious groups, where do you think that we fall in terms of our giving to support our own faith? I'm going to let you just think about that for a minute. Second highest earning income level of any faith group, and where do you think we are in terms of giving to support our own faith? The answer is dead last. We are last in terms of giving to support our own faith. And so using that statistic as a place to pause for another moment of reflection, I want to ask you to help me struggle with that and reckon with that question. So why do you think that this is, that there is this gap between statistical income earned and amount given to support our own tradition? I have, of course, a number of ideas about why this is the case, but I'm curious to know why you think this is. What gets in the way of our generosity being fully expressed toward the congregations we love? Often, lives are transformed. Our lives are transformed in our religious communities, and why that wouldn't be a place that we would choose to bless with whatever abundance we have is not fully understood. What do you think that we can do to change the tide? So I invite you, as we did a moment ago, to pause the video at this point and jot down your own answers to these questions, or if you're working with a group and using this as an opportunity for shared reflection, I invite you to get into groups of 2 and take 5 minutes for each person to respond to the question. And you pause here, and we'll come back in a minute. See you soon. You may have found that when you were having that conversation about giving levels, that the concern was, this concern may have been expressed about inclusion, because it comes up every time I have this conversation with congregations. That is, the matter of inclusion is a very high value for us as Unitarian Universalists. And I want to say that that is very important. And all who are nourished by our communities deserve the opportunity to participate fully in the community through giving. So what I tend to see is that we don't want to exclude anyone that we perceive may not have the ability to pledge at a high level. And it's appropriate to want to, to not exclude anyone. But where we go with that is often the wrong direction. We move away from the invitation to give and make a decision on behalf of that person about what we think they can or can't give. And that's not appropriate. It's also important to provide honest and loving challenge for those who could and should be pledging much, much more. And this statistic that we talked about a few moments ago about second highest earning religious group and last in terms of giving to support our own faith, that statistic points to the fact that as a faith, this seems to be our growing edge, actually asking people, challenging them lovingly to put their values in line with their giving. So I just want to take a moment to invite you to breathe again and ground yourself. And I invite you to think about one way in which your life is enriched by the tradition of Unitarian Universalism. And just sit with that for a moment. It's that place of gratitude and awareness of your blessings that I think is most profound as a place to come from when doing stewardship work. So I invite you to encourage others into that kind of reflection as well. So I want to provide you with another resource that I find fascinating and I use with every congregation that I go to visit. This is a study that is very interactive and user-friendly, found online, put out by the Center on Philanthropy, and it's called How America Gives, Generosity in the States, a Ranking. And so we're just going to try to go to this website here and do a little bit of investigating. There we go. So you'll see here that it's very searchable by zip code or county or metropolitan statistical areas or states. So it lists all income ranges, and let me just show you an example here. So here's the search tab, and I'm just going to put in the state of Iowa. And you can see here that the average percent of people's income that is given to charity in the state of Iowa is 3.03. And here is where they show breakdown by income bracket. And this is what is very, very interesting consistently. So the amount that individuals who make less than $25,000 in income a year, the percentage that they give to charity in Iowa averages 8.26%. We're moving to the next income level that's tracked here, 25,000 up to 50,000. That number dips from 8.26 to 3.86% given to charity. Up to $75,000, it's 3.1% given to charity. 75 to 100,000, it's 2.78. You can see the trend here. And from 100,000 to 200,000, it's 2.65. At $200,000 or more, it's 3.14. Sometimes it goes up like that a little bit at the $200,000 or more income level. But nevertheless, that's quite a disparity between the income level of up to $25,000, giving 8.26% to charity, and 3.14 being given by those who earn $200,000 or more. There's a lot of additional information that's sortable here that will show you age diversity and ethnic diversity and religious diversity, etc. And this tool can be really interesting for your local congregation to look at, to sort of bust some of the myths that we tend to carry around about giving. Stop sharing that and come back to the other screen. So the takeaway for me about this section is we don't want to make assumptions about people's ability to give. We don't want to make the decision for them about what they can or can't give. Asking people to give a percentage of income is recommended as opposed to a particular dollar amount. And the old adage of ask and ye shall receive, I tend to phrase it this way: if you must ask in order to receive. So part of what I think is challenging within our congregations is making time to actually practice asking one another for contributions, with the understanding that it's a privilege actually, and not a yucky task of any kind, to give people the opportunity to give to the church that they care so much about. So now I want to go into a discussion about covenant. And covenant, as I said at the very beginning, is a formal agreement or promise. And from our principles and purposes, the principles and purposes actually close with the following statement: grateful for the religious pluralism which enriches and ennobles our faith, we are inspired to deepen our understanding and expand our vision. As free congregations, we enter into this covenant, promising to one another our mutual trust and support. And in the UUA bylaws, there's a section about congregations and how they are admitted into membership of the UUA. A congregation becomes a member upon acceptance by the Board of Trustees of the association of its written application for membership, in which it subscribes to the principles of and pledges to support the association. So as I said earlier, my role is as Congregational Giving Director, and this means that I oversee the work of the annual program fund, which is known as GIFT in the southern region. And the annual program fund is, to me, the vehicle for your congregation's promised support to the association. So with it in mind, that the principles and purposes, which are embedded in the UUA bylaws as well as that section about membership of congregations in the UUA, promise congregational support of the association. I make the case that it's the annual program fund that's the vehicle for that promise to be fulfilled. The annual program fund powers the entire Unitarian Universalist Association as the largest source of income for the work that is done on behalf of all of our congregations. And that's really important. And I want to emphasize that support of the annual program fund is not about the headquarters of the association or Boston. All of the staff of the Unitarian Universalist Association, whether they are local to you or headquartered in Boston or in other places around the country, all of those staff members are doing the work of supporting all of our congregations by providing resources and programming. And so it's not just your congregation that gets something that is supported. It's all of the congregations in the association. And we're very proud to be a tradition that is non-creedal and independently governed. And I'm glad for that and wouldn't suggest that we change it at all. But we are an association of congregations. And one of the ways in which we demonstrate that is through our support of one another. And we do that through the annual program fund primarily. We are better together and stronger together, and we can do more together than we can as individual congregations. And we need one another. And the congregations around you and far away from you actually depend on your support of the annual program fund in order to offer all of the ministries that they offer in their communities. So while we can sometimes feel distant from one another, whether or not we are physically, no congregation actually exists in isolation. And the world is certainly crying out for our values to be strongly supported. And more, that case is being made for us in the larger culture quite strongly. So a couple of takeaways here that I want to share with you. One way that congregations institutionalize support for the annual program fund, more and more I hear about congregations who put the full level of requested support into the bylaws so that the congregation can talk every year about why that support is important, but it's not a matter of debate as to whether or not that support will be provided. Because in fact, the fulfillment of the annual program fund request is the fulfillment of a promise that has already been made, as we just talked about. And I think that congregational leaders are asked, what is it that we get for this money? As people look at the budget, they'll look at various line items and say, oh, well, that's a chunk of change. What is it that we get for that? And so we've put together some resources for you to use to answer that question with your congregation. And here's a link to one of them, which is on the APF section of the UUA website. Let's see if this share screen is going to let me do that. Get you onto that web page here. Okay, so here's a page. Here's a page, and the link is embedded right in this presentation here, about why we give to the annual program fund and what it is that our support provides. And so there are links here to all kinds of different things that you can share with your congregation to help them know what support is provided. As I said earlier, the annual program fund and gift create the energy that fuel the entire UUA. We provide the support, the credentialing of religious professionals, and the great justice organizing materials that are provided through Standing on the Side of Love, all kinds of religious education curricula available online 24 hours a day to those who need it. A great deal of financial aid that's provided to seminarians and religious educators, as well as financial assistance to retired ministers. Excuse me. And the list goes on and on. So I do encourage you to check out that webpage to be able to have that conversation with your own folks. If you really are excited about this subject and feel strongly about congregational support for the UUA, I would love to know that. We have a volunteer network of people who are in conversation with one another, congregation to congregation and minister to minister. And that's called the Generosity Network. So if you feel committed to and excited about this part of the presentation and this subject, please contact me, because I'd love to get you plugged in as a Generosity Network volunteer. And on the web page that we viewed a moment ago, there was a little video at the landing page here, which is a video thank you that we would love to have you show to your leaders. Here it is right here in the top left-hand corner. Let me just make sure that you're seeing the right thing. There it is. So here on the upper left-hand corner is a thank you video that's 2 minutes long. from the other congregations that your support benefits, thanking you and your congregation. And so that's a really nice way to be able to show your congregation and your leaders why their support is so valuable and what it means to so many. So I invite you to take heart and remember that at the heart of congregational giving, courage is at the heart of congregational giving. So I want to thank you so much for your time and attention, for your care for your congregation, which leads you to participate in doing this learning in the first place, and for your dedication to Unitarian Universalism, and for your courage. I would love to hear from you, so here's my direct email address, vweller@uua.org, and if you have questions about this presentation or other aspects of the annual program fund or gift, please contact me. Then there's a second email address provided there, apf@uua.org, which is handled by the folks in the amazing people in our annual program fund office. And they can answer for you the same kind of questions that I can, as well as many others. So feel free to reach out to either address. Again, I want to share these words from Wayne Arneson. Take courage, friends. The way is often hard. The path is never clear, and the stakes are very high. Take courage, for deep down, there is another truth. You are not alone. We, as Unitarian Universalists, need one another in this time. We need strong congregations, communities of resilience and hope, and we need a strong association to meet the challenges of our time. So your disciplined, sustained, sacrificial giving to your congregation and from your congregation to our association does nothing but advance those goals of making our principles more visible in the world, which is such a worthy thing to have happen in a time such as this. So again, thank you for all that you do to support our tradition, and I look forward to hearing from you about your inspirations and things that work for you all to improve and bolster the spirit of generosity in your congregation.